Okay, I think it's fair to say that one of the hardest things in our modern working world is staying focused on the task at hand. To put it bluntly, it's really hard not to get distracted. In the last 2 years, how we work has shifted even further away from having time to focus. You know, we now have to contend with the endless streams of Teams chats and instant messages on top of all the emails that we were getting before, along with whatever might be happening at home as well. And then there's the creeping temptation to watch a little bit of YouTube or put the telly on in the background and watch the news for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes or so. Because no one can see you slacking off at home, can they? So look, one of the things I wanted to do with this channel is share some actionable tips for you to try yourself if you're procrastinating over your next task that most of the time work really well for me. And I'll be sharing these over the next couple of weeks. I'm not putting a timeline to it, but I want to share some things that have worked for me. So the first and probably the most fundamental thing I changed was my relationship with email. I talked about living in your inbox at a recent team session that I presented at, and somewhat unfortunately, I wasn't wholly surprised with the amount that this concept resonated with some of my colleagues. Now, it's no disservice to them. We've all been in this situation before, but I think it was a light bulb moment for quite a few people based on the feedback that I got. Now, I firmly believe, and this is my quote, I don't think anyone else has said this, but the biggest detractor to our personal productivity is when our actions don't align with our goals. And our inboxes are a never-ending source of temptation to avoid doing the thing that you said you were going to do and perhaps doing something that someone else wants you to do, all the while feeling like you're being productive and you're getting work done. But are you getting the right work done is the question you need to ask yourself. I'm sure you've experienced days, maybe even very recently, where you've set yourself 3 things that you want to accomplish that day. If you do those 3 things, today will be a success. And you spend that day feeling super productive and, on top of things and really busy with endless Teams meetings and replying to emails and all of this sort of stuff. And then you get to the end of the day. You look down at your pen and paper, or you look in your task manager, and you see those 3 things that you set yourself at the top of the day unchecked, waiting for you to do something with. And that feeling of despair sets in as you've realised, I've lost today. That doesn't feel too good. So how do we avoid this trap? How do we change our relationship with email? So first thing I'd recommend is to schedule time in your calendar to deal with email. Make it a task to do rather than where you pick up your next task. So what I find works well for me is a 25-minute session, half an hour session at the top of each day, which I call the triage session. So kind of like an emergency room. This is where I'm looking for things that I need to do right now that might be really important that can't wait until one of my scheduled processing sessions. So I'll just do a quick flick through things that have arrived since my last session, and I will just respond to them and get them clear or delegate them to somewhere else if that's what needs to happen. Now, the rest I will leave until the next session I have in my day to process that email. Now, what I mean by processing email doesn't necessarily mean doing the thing that I'm being asked to do or responding to that email. And I'll come back to what I might do with that email in a tick. But the principle of this first tip is to set your intentions, right? This means that you'll have time on your calendar to deal with email rather than email being the thing that you always do. And you might have some situations, just to kind of to bat off a potential objection to this. You might have some situations where, well, the thing I need to do this morning is follow up with someone via email. And what I would recommend in that scenario is write out the thing that you need to send in a different app. So in your Notes app or in Microsoft Word or whatever it might be. And then if you don't need to send it right there and then, save that and wait until your next processing time to send that email, unless it's urgent, obviously. So first tip, setting yourself time in the day to deal with email. It kind of compartmentalizes it and makes sure that whilst you have time to deal with it, because we've all got to deal with it, it doesn't become your day. So the second thing I would recommend is get your actions out of your inbox. And this is kind of what I was referring to earlier, where processing your email doesn't necessarily mean responding to that email. Now, a lot of people use their inbox as their to-do list, either using a mixture of flagged for follow-up emails or leaving them as unread or moving them into a different folder, or there's loads of different ways that you could potentially use your inbox as a to-do list. And I think this is the absolute worst thing to do. The problem with this is that whenever you go to action that item, you have to go through your inbox to get there. And there is that temptation, that little red badge that shows you, you've got something new and shiny is potentially beckoning you, trying to steal your attention from the important thing that you needed to do right there and then onto something that might be maybe more exciting, maybe not. And it's human nature to want to gravitate to the new thing that's come in, but it will absolutely kill your productivity. And look, there are loads of task managers out there that that will fit the bill, and maybe I'll do another video on that in the future. But using anything other than your Outlook or your mail inbox will get you in a much better place than if you were to do that. So that's my second tip: get your actions out of your inbox. So these 2 points are going to be really hard to stick to if you have all of your notifications switched on, right? Which brings me on to my third point, which is switch them off. Switch off all of your notifications. Use your notification center as a least rights sort of principle. And there's a reason for this. And a lot of you are probably thinking, the anxiety is building up. What if I miss something? I think the thing to remember is, in most cases, email is asynchronous communication. It's not instant messaging. And so being notified every time a new email arrives is of no material benefit, right? So there's very rarely an expectation that you have to deal with email immediately. And if there is, then, maybe you need to realign your expectation with that individual, because it's going to be really hard for you to remain focused on your work if you've got this expectation with your clients or your colleagues where you'll respond to an email immediately as it arrives. Overall, it's fair to say email is probably the largest source of distraction in our professional world, but it is a necessary evil. Cal Newport wrote a fantastic book called A World Without Email, which I would highly recommend to anybody looking for further reading on this particular topic. It's got a lot of great content in there around how email kills personal productivity and what a world could be like if we adopted some more of the tactics that I've just kind of gone through, as a mass and not just as a kind of pockets of success. I think the fundamental thing to take away from this is no one's job is responding to emails, right? We all have a job that we do, whatever that might be. And the vehicle to get that job done might be to communicate with people via email. But your job is not and never will be just replying to emails. So that's it from me. I hope you enjoyed the video. And I'll be back in a few days or maybe a week or maybe a month, who knows, to give you my second tip on staying more focused and less distracted.